Hello everyone, this is Mr. John, and today I want to talk about how to build an invincible machine. Now, this is actually a more important question than you might think, but I'm not going to talk about why it's important today. Today, I'm just going to try to walk through the way you would do it. Now, first off, you want to make a machine that won't break. That's pretty clear. You're going to need something that's pretty sturdy. The problem is that the Earth has erosion and corrosion. It's a pretty dangerous place, the world. There's anything that lasts for a long time eventually wears away. You can see this with the pyramids of Egypt, you can see this with the Roman Colosseum, and you can see this in the fact that those are the best examples we have. Other things have disappeared, and mountain ranges have even passed over the millennia. So how do we combat erosion for our invincible machine? Well, we'd probably have to have some way for it to repair itself. So that every time part of it erodes away, you'd have it able to replace that. To be able to repair itself, you would definitely need to have replacement materials, so a way for the machine to collect new materials, and you'd also have to have a way for the machine to gather energy so that it can actually enact those repairs. So machines getting to the point where it's got some complexity, it has to have an energy generator, which you could say like solar, maybe geothermal, something like that. You could take materials for it to repair itself from maybe the air or the ground. You'd have to find some source. Okay, well, next we have to deal with disasters. What if there's lightning strikes or tornadoes or earthquakes or volcanoes? These are all things that could destroy our machine or ruin its capacity to repair itself. So we need to find a way to beat disasters. Some disasters you could avoid, but some, like lightning bolts, you can't really predict when or where they'll happen. Yeah, sure, you might not get struck or hit by a disaster for thousands of years, but we're looking for an invincible machine that'll last forever. So eventually it's going to come across some disaster. How do we beat that? Well, the best way I can think of is we make the machine so that it can create copies of itself. So that your machine will make another version of itself, so that now if one of them gets destroyed, then you still have another one. Well, great. We probably want it to be able to do that lots of times so that it can avoid a whole number of disasters. But now we have another problem. How do we deal with the fact that we don't know what disasters are going to happen? You can't predict in advance whether you're going to have a tornado, or you can't predict if you're going to have an ice age, or maybe the earth will get super hot. Maybe there will be a super volcano or a meteor that spews dust into the atmosphere and you can't get solar power anymore. So there's so many different things that could happen that we cannot predict of when or where they'll happen. So we could just have the machine copy itself and spread itself all around. But eventually, if we have the wrong features of the machine, the wrong energy source or whatever, one of these disasters, if it was global, could wipe out our machine entirely. We don't want that. We want an invincible machine. So how do we make the machine ready to withstand any disasters? That's going to be hard, because every disaster that you need the ability to protect yourself against is going to require extra complexity, and sometimes you will have things that will counteract each other. So a machine that might be really good at resisting cold and surviving cold environments might be really bad at hot environments. Or a version that's really good on land might not be able to handle water. So you have to find some way to make it so that your machine can adapt to individual situations. One way to do this, the best way I can think of, is you make it so that the machine makes different versions of itself. Every time it copies itself, it gives it a different feature. It changes something about how the way the next copy works. And then when that copy continues, it can keep making more versions. So then you can have versions that will survive pretty much anything. There's a problem though. We can't pre-program that. We can't say, hey, here's the list of every possible natural disaster, and we're just going to go ahead and spew out thousands of different versions of this machine, and each one will be tuned to the specific disaster. Reason for that is because we don't know what disasters could happen. Sure, we know a lot about science nowadays, but a few hundred years ago, we didn't know about threats that we know today. And today, we don't know about threats that we'll know about a few hundred years later. So we can't prepare, we can't expect everything that could go wrong. So how do we keep our machine invincible when we don't even know what might destroy it? My solution is randomness. You make the machine so that when it makes a copy and it makes these changed versions that can adapt or can be adapted to different situations, instead of specifically programming individual changes, you make random changes. Those random changes may or may not make something about the machine work better in a different environment, a different disaster, a different situation. It might not, so you will probably need to have a lot of chances with this. You will have to roll the dice of random chance a whole bunch. You'll need to make tons of copies, and every time you make a copy, you need to make changes. And every copy that has changes made needs to make copies of itself that has changes made, and it keeps going and going until you have millions, billions, even trillions of versions of your machine. If you want this to be invincible, you're going to have to roll those random dice enough times that you can hopefully be able to survive any unexpected disaster because of the random optimizations that come about. So now we run into the problem of resources. We want to make billions and trillions of copies of our machines, but there's only so much space on the planet. There's only so many resources available. There's only so much energy available. We need to be able to roll those dice as often as we can. We need to get as many random versions can survive, as many possible different outcomes. So how do we keep rolling the dice instead of, oh, we filled up the place with machines and now it's it. Let's hope we got enough different versions going. Well, counterintuitively, you might want to set the machines to self-destruct, to break down after a certain period of time. So maybe after they've had enough time to make a certain number of copies of themselves with a certain number of random changes, the older ones break down so that their resources are now available to the new ones. So you keep rolling those dice and getting randomization after randomization so you can hopefully develop more and more different versions of it that could better survive more situations or better adapted to the way their planet has changed around them so that they can keep producing more, they can keep spreading more so that we can have as close to invincible as possible for our machines. Now, we kind of run into this problem, though, of overpopulation still, because you need each machine to make more than one of itself. If one of them gets destroyed, you don't just want one copy to replace it, because, well, if that one gets destroyed as well, you need it to have multiple copies, but we need some way to limit the use of resources even more and to how many machines so we can get to the maximum capacity of the environment to hold machines without stopping our ability to keep creating machines. So we need some way for the machines to limit themselves while still copying. A good way to do this would be to actually have some sort of competition where the machines that fit best in the environments they're in, and you could have this spread across the globe and have multiple environments, so you could have multiple different machines with multiple different situations where they can have different optimizations, but in each of their respective areas, the ones that are most optimized should probably shut down or push out the ones that aren't optimized. And since you're going to be having random changes, some of those random changes might be completely useless and not fitting at all for the situation. So you should probably have some way to cut those out as well. Now we've got a situation where we can have a maximum amount of our machines populating this planet that we can have continual rolling of random chance so that we can avoid any unpredictable future disaster. Now, if you want this to be truly invincible, at some point you would have to have it so that this machine could leave its home planet, because eventually a home planet is going to be destroyed by its own star. But if you can get them into interstellar travel, you could have them populate many different stars and many different planets and become truly invincible machines. Now, this is my way that I see for creating an invincible machine. Let me know if you have a different route. If you think there's a way to create a invincible machine using real physics, by the way, I'm not counting magic in this. If you can think of a real way to make an invincible machine that is not this way, let me know. Or if you think there's other issues that I didn't address that need to be addressed that could destroy my invincible machine, let me know on that one as well. And if you think that you figured out why this is a really important concept, let me know that too. You have a good day. I'll see you in the next one.